ready to start? Okay. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Shall we take roll?
Chair Eagleston Cheslowich,
Present?
Vice Chair Roman,
Present.
Board Member Heinrich,
Present.
Board Member McKinnon,
Present.
Board Member Pease,
Present.
Board Member Willis,
Present.
Board Member Wimmer.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. Do we have any agenda changes?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. And do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
Yes, there is one raised hand on Zoom from Darlene Yapley.
Okay. Is this regarding something that's on the agenda?
I assume not, or we can ask.
Okay.
Darlene,
Good morning. I just wanted to make an overall statement. If you could remember as a process to ask for comments for items on the agenda, since sometimes it's been forgotten after people speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So I'd like to move discussion of the schedule to the end, if that's all right. And let's just move on to the staff report and presentation.
Well, I was hoping you'd deal with the other part first because I'm loading up.
Oh,
hold
okay.
on.
Then schedule it is. So does anybody have absences or schedule suggestions? One thing I noticed on here is I think we're going to be having some evening meetings.
Yes, we haven't targeted those yet. We do have one anticipated evening meeting for the fall. This is going to be the community meeting. We have not set the date yet.
Okay.
Okay, I will be absent on September 14th.
Okay.
And I will be absent on September 28th.
And I will be absent on October 12th.
You're, oh, okay. Great. So let's move on to the staff report.
Thank you. So the last we spoke about this historic resources reconnaissance survey was at our retreat, which we did hold in the evening on July 28th. And that at that meeting, you all had a 2-page sort of summary of this. And we didn't have the benefit of the consultant at that retreat. We had a number of items, and this was just one of them. So today, this was the meeting schedule. Today, the goal is to review the report, discuss the report. Hopefully you have seen it and reviewed it. It's in your packet. And one of the things that the consultant is interested in as his staff is how the categories are not fully aligned with the criterion for designation to the local inventory. So this is something that the consultant will be seeking input from the board. And then here, just as the kind of timeline on this is, we do have HRB meetings that we're going to be targeting in September and October through December. And then these cover letters that are being prepared to each of the property owners of the properties that appear in the inventory, or sorry, in the survey. So this is just the overall schedule for the public that may not have been following this. So after that, we will have, or kind of in the midst of that, I believe we'll have a community meeting and in the evening this fall. And then this is not a HRB decision at all. It's an HRB recommendation or nominations, and the council is the decision point on each and every one of these properties. So just basically the criterion for designation to the local inventory are broader, particularly the second and fourth criteria in the types of resources that they cover than the actual inventory categories 1 through 4 that are narrowly phrased and prioritize architectural quality. So this future concept would be for the HRB to revisit the categories more broadly. So that is pretty much the topic that I think the consultants and staff would like to hear from the board. And then this was the slide I presented last time about the survey. And just overall, 167 properties evaluated. Excuse me, these were the 167 properties, this 154 identified as potentially eligible in the National Register, for the National Register, not even potentially, they were determined eligible at the time for the National Register, and then an additional 13 properties identified as eligible for the California Register in the past decade. So I presented this last time. We can go back to this if people want to talk about this slide further. We have these tables ready. So I'm gonna not go through this presentation again. I'm gonna leave it on this and see how the pleasure of the chair, how to proceed. We do have our consultant online if you would like to hear from our consultant.
Yes, please.
So Christina.
Hi, good morning. Christina Dykes from Page and Turnbull. This topic came up because our next step in this reconnaissance survey is to align the properties that we did find to retain integrity that were eligible for the National Register and the California Register with the Palo Alto inventory categories and prepare cover letters that explain how the National Register reasons for significance or California Register can translate to the local inventory so that then these properties can be considered for addition to the inventory. And so what we realized, though, when we started looking at this is that though the criteria for designation align generally with National and California Register criteria, which include not only a criterion for architecture or recognition of a known architect, artistic value, but there are also criteria for association with important events, broad patterns or specific events, as well as important people that are directly connected. The reason that they are important is directly connected to a particular property. And so the criteria for designation do include structures or sites identified with the lives of historic people or important events, representative of an architectural style or way of life, examples of a type of building, a business or use which was once common. Again, another one about architecture building was important. And yet when we get into the categories, and our intention is to align these National Register eligible properties with a criterion 1 or 2, but they don't totally align. And so we're interested to hear your feedback before we continue forward with a methodology to see if you agree with the approach that we're thinking of taking, or if you have other suggestions or other things that might come up. So under category 1, which is exceptional building and the Palo Alto Register, this is of properties of preeminent national or state importance, the work of the best architects, outstanding examples of specific architectural style. And so we are thinking that we could include architect design buildings, recognized known architects for these properties that we've surveyed under category 1. So this could include prominent builders and architects that were previously identified in the 1997 to 2001 survey. But few, if any, buildings will be category 1 due to this national state importance. We do feel that most of these properties are significant within a local context, and I think that When Dames and Moore surveyed them, they did note that you can have a property that's eligible for the National Register, but at the local level. So that particular focus of category 1 of national or state importance means that not many of these properties will fit under that. Under category 2, this is a major building of regional importance. Again, the description is very architecture and architect focused. There's nothing that incorporates some of those criteria for designation about the lives of historic people, important events, or businesses in any of these. So we are thinking that under category 2, we'd associate this one with properties identified for the National or California Register that are good examples of a style or a rare building type. And that we would include all associations with a significant person under this. There actually are several of these properties that were surveyed 20 years ago that were identified as significant under a significant person. So despite the fact that none of the category definitions include this, our methodology would explain that we feel that significant people can be considered as, major building. So that's something to talk about. And then categories 3 and 4 in the register are contributing buildings, good local examples, but I think the idea is really more about contextualization. So about the character of a neighborhood grouping. And so we would potentially categorize some of these properties that are modest and have also been altered, but they still have good enough integrity to represent their significance, or ones that are associated with a general trend in Palo Alto, such as illustrating densification or an important period of growth. And this is the words from the survey 20 years ago. So a little bit lower threshold of integrity would distinguish between 3 and 4. So we excluded properties that we felt did not retain integrity when we did the survey process through the summer. But there are some that retain enough integrity, but not quite as high as others. And so we would use that to distinguish and put some of these buildings into category 3 or 4. So that's pretty much where we are today, and we would like to hear from you before we move forward with the next steps of taking this kind of methodology and then applying it to all of the properties and creating a rationale for which of the categories they're most appropriate to be in. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Do board members have comments or questions?
I have a few questions. So for starters, I noticed you're using the word register, which when we proposed an ordinance 20-some years ago, that was the intent. I'm just wondering if there is some distinction between register and inventory. Inventory sounding so innocent, but
I threw both around. Different cities use different words, and I have a habit of using the wrong word depending on the city. So I think I switched partway through, thinking maybe Palo Alto is a register and not an inventory. It depends on the city and how you define it. There are cities that use the term inventory and it means the same thing as register. There are cities that use the term inventory and it's a little bit, their definition is a little different. It's a long list of identified properties, but they may not have the same kind of requirements under an ordinance as a register. So I think they can mean the same thing or they can mean something different.
Which leads me to another one of my thoughts. So I'm not sure where we're going with our inventory and owners' preferences, but it seems to me that maybe categories 3 and 4, one of those could be a category that is just merely an inventory that has no additional repercussions other than what's already there since they've been identified as historic by the survey. There are some CEQA repercussions, I guess, or advantages. But it seems like, if people do not feel like they want to add any additional whatever to their property, that there might be some advantage to just having a purely inventoried category. And that's kind of a question. So you don't have any thoughts on that one? No.
Caroline, maybe you can further explain your question. So I'm not clear of the question either.
I'm just saying that we do not really distinguish between 3s and 4s. And I've been working with the inventory long enough that I really don't see any, but I can imagine that when we go to homeowners and we say, we want to put you on our inventory, and they say, no, but it is just an inventory. And it seems to me there could be a holding category that is an inventory, because even if the current property owners don't want to be on it, maybe the next ones do. So I don't really know if there's any actual difference, but I think there might be a psychological difference for owners who feel like, no, not me, and we just say, okay, but it will be inventoried, it will remain inventoried. So that's kind of my thought, because we can't just lose these, they've already been, we can't go back. They've been surveyed, they've been identified. So they're going to be subject to CEQA. They're going to be subject to some regulations. We can't just say, oh, no, they're not historic because the current owner doesn't want them to be. At least that's my understanding. And maybe if I have this totally wrong, please help me out with this one. But I just feel like maybe we need to allow for the fact that we need to pre-think what we want to do with properties where the owner does not want to be on the inventory, because we want a record of these properties.
Right. That was sort of my thought when we were talking about the categories 3 and 4. I thought, well, there's so much sort of indescript, like you're a certain type or you're in a general area. It seems very generalized. So I think, how is that going to impact someone who owns one of these properties and maybe wants to do some future development or something? I think that's also, but I think every property is unique and it has to go through that sort of CEQA step to determine what it all means. I think categories 3 and 4 have always been sort of vague in a sense. So but I think it's good that at least we have, even though the categories might seem kind of vague, like you're saying, at least we have something that we can group these properties into. So at least they're on some kind of radar. At least have some kind of classification.
Amy, do you have?
Well, I'm not quite willing to give up 3s. I think I think what is now a 3 or a 4 becomes a 3. And my vision is that a 4 becomes something else.
I thought, well, you know how we have the ones that are potentially eligible? Like if you look on the parcel reports, if your house is of a certain age, it's potentially eligible. I always thought, well, maybe that's what category 4 is. No, okay.
That
Just
is
a
the
thought.
category
Okay,
that I want to just scrap.
Out.
Put that in a file somewhere and take it off the radar. And if we want to go through it and identify actual historic properties on that one, yay, go for it. But to have that huge holding tank, I don't like that at all.
Yes, Amy.
May I speak to this
Yes.
matter? Okay, just to be really clear, the ordinance as it stands is the same ordinance we've had for a long time, where category 3 and 4 homes, unless they're in Professorville or downtown, they are not protected by our ordinance. If they're going forward with this inventory, there's an opportunity to consider when a home is placed on the inventory as a category 3 or 4, that it doesn't have a big consequence if those homes that are designated there, so let's say an owner says, I don't want to be on the inventory, and it's clear to them that a category 4, this approach you're talking about, category 4, let's say, is not subject to regulations, is not subject to anything mandatory. That could be of interest to that owner, like you're going in this direction. Currently, unless it's downtown or in Professorville, there is not anything in the way of regulation for those homes currently. So I never like to say that in a public hearing, because the people that are currently category 4 homes, well, they may not be aware of that, and they may think there's, that category 4 is an encouragement to keep their home, which it kind of is, but it's not it carries less weight as far as regulations. And so I don't know if that's helpful at all in this
Amy,
discussion.
I understand it carries less weight, but since these properties have already been identified as historic, there is still some CEQA consequences. Is that true one way or the other?
Well, let's be clear when we say these properties. When Board Member Wimmer was talking about the potentially eligibles, those are the priority 1 and priority 2 windshield surveys. It's basically unevaluated. They just happen to be built before 1948. So the potentially, when that word appears in our parcel reports, potentially, it means they were appearing on that windshield survey, but there was no further study. You could say the same thing about properties that are now 50 years old and older. Those are also potentially eligible. They haven't been studied either. So we have to be careful about using that word potentially. It's different than the ones we're talking about in this exercise, which are deemed eligible back in 2000, and some continue to remain so because they have integrity. I hope that helps.
Well, I am only talking about the ones that we have, the ones that have been identified, the 145. So are there regulations outside of being on the inventory that would affect them because they are identified as historic properties?
Properties that are deemed eligible are not protected under our current ordinance.
Right.
So there is nothing there for, now I say nothing, but if somebody does come through with a discretionary application, certainly for commercial ARB applications, do require CEQA because, but single family homes,
Only commercial. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
are not protected currently.
Thank you.
I have a question for Paige and Turnbull. The attachment B, table 5, under significance criteria, are those designations only for the national and California registers? Do we not have a column for the categories for Palo Alto?
I'm not looking at the attachment, but yes, I'm assuming that was the criterion for National Register or California Register, and we haven't connected all of these properties yet with the local categories because we're having this conversation right now about how best to do that, since the categories are defined so narrowly, but the significance of the properties as identified using National or California Register criteria are more broad. So we're, kind of looking to create a methodology to expand the each of the categories, particularly 1 and 2, to be able to, particularly 2, I think we really want to focus on, so that we can include significant people under that, even though the category definition doesn't include that. So once we're able to kind of establish that this is an appropriate approach, then we will associate the local categories with all of these properties. And that will be in the next step where we'll prepare a cover letter for every one of these that will provide a rationale.
I do agree that there's a gap here in the categories that this associations with significant people is not really discussed. So yeah, I think we do need a place to put those properties. And Amy, my question for you is, in order to do that, do we need to do a formal revision? Do we need to submit something?
That's my question as well. If we're all bought off on, yes, we agree with this analysis and we're for it, do we need to actually change the ordinance?
Well, it is one of the work program items because it's in our comprehensive plan to review the current Chapter 1649 in the municipal code for its effectiveness. What does that mean? Is it effective at allowing people to demolish their homes? Is it effective at allowing preservation? That's an analysis that's out there waiting. So we've started this effort first. We have not started the next effort, which is evaluate the effectiveness of the ordinance.
But I guess my question is, do we have the power as the HRB to tell Page and Turnbull to go ahead? We agree with this. And we're basically doing a very, very liberal interpretation of each of the categories in the code.
I think, we're asking for the HRB's input on, I think, if let's say, all of these on the inventory, survey are qualified as category 2 if they're still having integrity. Let's say that's a statement. Does the HRB agree that that's the approach we should initially take? You could do a straw poll if you'd like on that. We'd still be coming in with individual properties in multiple, 4 HRB meetings to bring these batches of homes forward.
So really the question is, for the purposes of moving forward with this survey, do we want to include associations with significant people in a category 2, at least for now? Yeah, okay.
That's my understanding.
And it is like kind of a very limited discussion of what's going on with categories, simply for the purposes of this. I know there's a longer range
Correct.
discussion of categories that's broader and ongoing thing that's included in the work plan. But just for the purposes of moving this forward,
Exactly.
that's what we need.
My
Yeah.
understanding is, for the purposes of moving this forward, we give Page and Turnbull the license to categorize 1, 2, and then 3 or 4 as needed. And then that will allow us to come back at a later date and vote on these or recommend these to council for listing in the inventory.
Mhm.
But this is like the first step that we need to do before we can
So-
move forward.
So for instance, we haven't discussed how we might bring, the 4 batches in, but we could, let's say, come back with, here's the category 2s, right, for association. Here are the category, that could be one meeting. Another meeting could be a category 2s for architecture. I don't know. I mean, we could talk about that, how you would like to see these batches come forward. And Page and Turnbull may have a concept on that as well. We haven't gotten to that point where we're discussing how these batches come forward.
And this may be, bullish. I hope it's not, but I would like to see us actually move a project forward. So I am definitely in favor of having some license with the categories.
Yeah, is it possible to just kind of get a sense of, can we provide some direction on this? Is it possible to kind of get a sense from people whether Page and Turnbull's proposal is something that we're okay with?
I think it behooves us to start out broadly, and if we have to narrow it down because for some reason council doesn't agree that significant people are significant, then we backtrack. But I think as long as the reasons they're identified as historic or documented, that I think we're fine, assuming that we can change the ordinance to match the survey results.
So how do we define significant people? I mean, Jerry Garcia's room, bandmate's house, is that, the Grateful Dead? I mean, is that significant? Or, how do you determine, I mean, to a deadhead, that'd be very significant, but to the rest of us, it's like, oh, so what? It was a band member, so w- there
Our
needs to be a
recommendation,
definition for significant, because there was the Alan Cranston's house is what, across the street, kitty corner from Melissa's house, and, but who remembers Alan Cranston, so is he significant?
Christina, what criteria are you using?
so the National Register and the California Register have bulletins for how to analyze, evaluate a property for association with an important person under their criterion B or 2. National California Register. So my recommendation would be, if the HRB does want to make some adjustments to the definitions of the categories at some point, to try to align them with the National and California Register, which are, benchmarks, and most cities do that now, I would say. So you could use the guidance from those registers. In terms of people, it's typically a person that is recognized for contributing to their business or their community, and that this property is the best representation of the reason why they're significant. So it's not, as we say, that George Washington slept here. There's a direct connection to an important person, and that could be like an early, community member, or things like that. I do think that in the Dames and Moore survey, they were a little bit liberal with that, and we haven't really questioned the definitions of significance from that survey. We were focusing on integrity. So we're going to roll with the reasons that they identified and still try to connect them to these categories. But there are a number that are, identified for the original or an early owner.
So I'm just we have these in our packet, so I'm just gonna read them so we're all clear. So for National Register, criteria B is person. This is on packet page 13, and it's properties associated with the lives of persons significant in our past. That's very broad. And then for the California Register, it is criterion 2, resources that are associated with the lives of persons important to local, California, or national history. So I think we have some, again, creative license with those.
Yeah, they're stated quite broadly. There is a bulletin, a National Park Service bulletin, that provides guidance for how to interpret each of the criteria and provides a lot more information. But there is still, I think, just based on the wording of the criteria themselves, some room there for interpretation.
And actually, kind of a related question, are you planning on doing further research on some of these properties that are, have, historical figures that, may or may not rise to that level of significance? I know there were a couple of other open homeowner questions that may require research. Is that kind of a future thing you're going to be working on?
Yeah, we don't really have that in our scope. I think that we might do a little bit of spot research if we really have one that we're questioning, and try to find a little bit more information. We have received some historic information from owners after that first community meeting as well, and we did consider that, but it's not really a part of our scope, so we're trying to keep the time doing any additional research to a minimum.
Okay. Yeah, it does sound, on our packet page 21, there is a reference to some additional research that was done on certain properties, and it was hard to tell from our packet which properties these were. So maybe that's something we could also just, find out for next time.
Yeah, and sometimes, since we were looking at integrity, we took pictures and we looked at the properties from the street, but for a handful, it was a little unclear what had been changed about those properties. So we did look at some Sanborn maps and, some photos over time and things like that to compare and have an understanding of how the building changed and what the integrity truly was. So that comment about research may have been focused on alterations.
Okay. You want Well, do we want to have some public comment at this point? Is that maybe before we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's do public comment. And I know we probably have online participants as well.
Yes, we have one in person and one on
Okay.
Zoom. First one in the chambers is Lad Wilson. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Carlisle Wilson. I'm known locally as Lad Wilson. I am here because I am the owner of 2 of the properties that are on your list or potential list. And they are 334 High Street in Palo Alto and also 342 High Street. I have been a resident of Palo Alto since 1960, when my parents first came here and bought Dahl Plumbing and Heating. We also had the experience of having all of our plumbers living in Palo Alto. Those days are long gone. I'm here because I'm requesting that you remove, or as I'm hearing your frustration with your categories, establish maybe a category of what is potentially could happen with my particular houses. What Page and Trumbull did not really unveil is that those 2 parcels are part of 6 parcels that are contiguous. And those 6 parcels are the core of that block. And I have been a landlord since since my parents and I've taken over, but now the property's been in our hands for 63 years. We have, in those 2 houses, those 2 houses are examples of cohabitation, very rare in Palo Alto. They've been that way since the 1960s, and they still are. So I have 10 individuals that are employees of some companies in Silicon Valley that have affordable living. I take pride in also trying to be under market for my rentals. I have very few transitions. People are with me for a long time. I have one person that's been with me for over 30 years. So I think that what I'm asking for and hearing what your frustration is that your categories, whatever, if these houses are not removed, what they should be is designated or recognized as potential houses that could be part of a redevelopment of that area. And I say that not lightly because I've been considering it for some time. I will finish all my leases in the future, which goes to 2013. But I also think that your historical standards of Page and Trimble are in conflict with the housing element of downtown Palo Alto. And the thing is that if you look at it, the 6 parcels that I have is really your epicenter for development for worker affordable housing. I'm right across from the train station. This is a big deal. And the thing is that you should have a category that allows those buildings to be torn down in lieu of creating worker housing for downtown Palo Alto. I also live on the property. I live at 344 High Street. That's my primary residence, has been since 2014. I live, breathe, and walk on that block. And the thing is that I foresee, as the housing developments are done, that they're good at building expensive studios and 1-bedrooms, and it's not really affordable. It's not affordable for 2 of my 3 kids. They had to move out of state. They couldn't afford to live here. I only have 1 left. And unfortunately, he's very well established. However, what I'm asking for is that for what my consideration is for in the future to, if we do a redevelopment, I'm going to be more focused on exactly what I do now, cohabitation. I'm looking to put in like 5 bedrooms with 1 common kitchen and 2 bathrooms throughout the development that creates kind of the sweet living that we had if some of us went to University of California in our suites for when we were students. And the thing is that I also encourage the city to look at, and they don't know anything about it, they should look at the Palo Alto Fire Department, which is my next door neighbor, and they should put housing on top of the fire department, either incorporating it or moving it to provide housing for their employees, which you're going to have a real problem with. You already have a problem, but you're really going to have a problem. There's only 1 cop that I know of that lives in Palo Alto.
Thank you. Can we ask you to wrap it up now, please? Thank you.
So I'm asking you for consideration to allow some sort of category that will allow us to at least consider and not give us a handicap of having a historical standard that really will drive people of my intention away from trying to develop, period.
Okay, thank you. And then do we have our next public comment?
Yes, next is Darlene Yapley. If you can unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I have 4 comments. The first, believe it or not, is just terminology. I believe I am on the inventory list, confirmed through the survey that I could continue to be on the inventory list, and that I am not on the, I'm not bound by the ordinance. Does this mean I'm on the historical list or not? I'm only raising this because I think there's a lot of language that's used that is confusing for the resident to be precise in our feedback and to read the minutes and understand what our comments should be. So that's number 1 is terminology. Second, I am doing the best I can, but I do not see the slide set in the packet. And in 2022, there were links to minutes and attachments. In 2023, I just went through all the meetings. There is only the agenda, and I don't see even minutes. So if the minutes are approved, how could we comment on the minutes? So I just encourage some posting of information so that we can go back through the materials and make comments. My third comment is that I urge you to look at a category that has people on the inventory, but they do not want to be historical and they do not fit, I believe, your category 1 or 2. Again, since I don't have the packet, I can't know for sure. And my final comment is we do want to make comments. It's hard to do so if we can only do it based on verbally what we're seeing and a subset of slides that we're seeing put up. And so I encourage you for transparency and just to minimize any confusion, that we work out clarification before we get to meetings down the line. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all our comments.
Okay, nobody else? Get around. Okay, great. Thank you all. So are there any additional board member comments? Do we need to make a motion to help Paige and Turnbull move forward?
I have one question, comment before we make a motion. My understanding, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, is the HRB can make a recommendation based on the ordinance categories for houses to be, or structures to be preserved. However, our recommendations are unfortunately discretionary.
Yeah, the HRB is a recommending body to the city council. So if the HRB, after this process concludes, which is going to take many months, if those recommendations go to council we think you should, we propose or nominate these properties to be put on our inventory, the council can say, no, we don't want to. They could say, we'll put these ones and not those ones. So it's all, I think the way our ordinance is written, it's not, we can propose, anybody can propose. In fact, we have a proposal that just came in for a property to be nominated. So that doesn't happen very often, but it's not the property owner. So what happens there? Does the property owner agree? Maybe not. So when it gets to council, they'll be faced with somebody else is proposing to put this on our inventory, and then the property owner has a different opinion, and that'll be their decision.
I guess the question that I'm getting at is whether a property is designated on our local inventory as category 1, 2, 3, or 4. There isn't anything that prohibits the property owner from doing what they would like with it. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
Okay,
So
it's not correct.
category 1 and 2 properties that are on our existing inventory have protection, some protection under the existing old ordinance.
Got it.
Category 3s and 4s only have some protection if they're located in downtown
Right.
or Professorville.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I appreciate the public coming to speak to us because it's interesting, or it's important for us to hear, what your perspective is and sort of what issues that you see this presenting to you in the future. I think, as a board, we are just trying to protect and preserve because, it's just sad to see a lot of these resources lost and replaced with a big, glass box that is impersonal and, out of scale for what was, a very charming downtown and city that's obviously evolving. But I also think it's important for the public not to see these as, something that's going to prevent you from doing something in the future. I think it's just our step of preserving Palo Alto because we all love Palo Alto. And I just hate to see people perceive this historic, sort of preservation effort as a negative thing. We're here because we think it's a positive thing. So, and also I feel like people who've come through the process of having their projects reviewed by the HRB, I think it makes a better project overall for them. And I've only heard pretty much positive feedback from people who've had their projects reviewed and supported by the board. So I just wanted to say, in terms of public perceptions of what we're doing, I think we need to be mindful of. But I just wanted to appreciate the comments that were made.
Great. Anything else? Do we need a motion or is there discussion sufficient?
I think maybe a straw poll would be sufficient. I
Okay.
wanted to just make one comment though, and I was looking to see, excuse me, if Darlene Yapley is still in attendance, because she did make some comments regarding the availability of minutes.
Yes.
We have the minutes for June 8th and June 22nd in our packet today to act on. And when I'm looking online, I see that the minutes are posted from May 25th and beyond or prior. So I'm a little confused about the minutes concern. And I'm welcome Darlene to reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide links to all of those minutes and have further conversation about her home. I don't know what the property address is for her home, but please, Darlene, reach out to me and I will have a conversation. Thanks.
Thanks. All right. So let's do a straw poll of having Paige and Turnbull move forward as proposed. Just voice it. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we hear, I don't know if Mike, we get a visual on.
It looks like he stepped away.
Oh, okay. So we'll just say
No, abstention.
absent.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so then let's move on to minutes, the approval of minutes. So looking at, I think we've got two here. We have two, right? Yeah, we've got two. Okay, so let's, we can start with do you care what order they're in? Okay, so looking at the June 22nd, does anybody have comments, changes? Nope. Okay.
I move to approve the minutes of June 22nd.
Thank you.
I second.
And can we voice vote this too? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. And then looking at the minutes from July 28th, does anybody have comments or changes? All right.
I move to approve the minutes of July 28th.
It's on page 45. The cover page is page 45 of the packet.
Oh, it's June, right? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't think we're approving July 28th, right? It's
No.
June 8th.
So the cover page has July 28th
Oh,
here. Yeah.
I amend my,
So, there's a discrepancy. Okay, so it's, I guess, the June 8th meetings is the other one also says July 28th. So I think our cover pages are both.
I think it's still okay
June
Brown
20
Act wise because the agenda calls them out by date. It's just
Okay.
that cover memo, we messed up.
Okay, so we're
I was out
actually
of town
looking
last
at the June 8th meeting minutes. I think we got the first set right, actually. So June 8th meeting minutes, does anybody have changes or comments? No, okay.
I move to approve the June 8th meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And what about Mike?
Yeah,
Mike
he's
is
back.
absent too. So Mike and Christian and I were absent, so.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I hear that there's abstention on that last one?
I wasn't there and neither
Could we
Christian.
redo that just because I heard Mike, board member McKinnon voiced something.
Yes, okay, let's redo that voice vote. So this is the approval of the June 8th meeting minutes. All in favor? Aye. And abstentions?
Me,
McKinnon. Abstain.
I, Willis.
I was absent.
Abstain.
Okay, so 4 in favor, 3 abstentions. All right. Is there anything else? Do we want to revisit the schedule or anything before we conclude?
I have some comments. Can I comment?
Sure.
A few things. Sort of in passing, I think we will be having some new board members, I'd say, within the year. I think we need to think about board orientation since Samantha hadn't seen a DPR sheet previous. So just saying. And I think it's time to do some serious foundation work. And I know we've been really dependent on past to keep our inventory in the public eye, but Carolyn George is not a spring chicken. Sorry, honey. And I think we need to, if she,
Carolyn George is going to pass the baton.
oh,
And
good,
I don't remember the name of the person who's going to take over the web pages.
good. But I think even at that, I think it's a mistake to be totally dependent on past to keep up our inventory. And also, I think there's a difference between past having a very readable, friendly presentation and also us as sort of the key holders to Palo Alto's heritage. I think that people should be able to go online and see the DPR sheets for the properties that are on our inventory. And I'm sorry, but this is a hard way to look at it. And I don't know how many of you guys have a copy of this, but it's our inventory. And I feel really strongly. So if we cannot get a state grant or not money from council, I am willing to go beg, borrow, and steal and try and fund it independently, but I don't think that is necessarily the best response. I think it's a civic responsibility and our responsibility. And I would like by the time we start adding properties to our inventory, I think our inventory should be accessible to the public and online. And people, when we say we're adding your property to the inventory, it shouldn't be, we're putting a little piece of paper in the file in some cupboard somewhere, you know, it should be obvious. And I think it'll be a much more, a much smoother process. You know, in this day and age, it's kind of weird that we do not have, I mean, this is not very Palo Alto, if you ask me. So I think we need to focus really strongly on this basic building block to our preservation efforts.
I agree. I think it's digital archival 101. It's time to, as we refer to these and they affect homeowners' decisions, we need to make them easily accessible. And I agree that PAST is a wonderful partner, but it's not responsible to rely on them to do what really the city should be maintaining.
So I can respond. Certainly, the list of the inventory addresses is on our website. So we're talking about the 1970s black and white forms that are a page and a half.
Yeah,
are
the
not-
historical context, and basically anything that when Page and Turnbull will bring each of these properties for designation on the local inventory, all that data comes from the DPR.
Right. So this effort that we're doing now for the ones that are not on the listed inventory properties that are online, but the DPRs aren't, we will have those posted online. And we can post those old forms from the 1970s that don't say as much as modern day DPRs say.
And that project's in process, or?
No, it hasn't. I haven't had those inventory forms put online for the existing category 1 through 4 homes.
Right.
So that's what's being requested.
Right.
And I can do that. It pales by comparison to what PAST has, because they have color photos of the homes and it's nicely laid out. What I would be able to do is just scan the existing paper forms and have those appear such
and I
as
think
they
that's
are.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's fine.
Yeah, if
And-
just a linked record.
Yeah.
And Amy, at that point, isn't it possible to add some color pictures as we get around to doing that?
I mean, I think this is something that would involve more effort, and we can talk about that further, I guess.
Well,
Maybe
I
not.
think for starters, if we had this lovely, you know, I mean, if we had, hopefully we could get some decent scans. I don't know what kind of copies you have, but if we could get some decent scans online, I think that would be a great start. And then it would be indexed, right? You could locate it by address.
Yeah, so I'm feeling a bit like I didn't know you had a binder, so I didn't know that. So I think if all
Paid
board,
$20 for that binder in the 80s.
the contents of the binder,
Yeah.
doesn't matter about the binder itself.
No, I meant
That
I bought the inventory back in the
I see.
good old days. I bought it from the city.
Oh, okay.
See,
So-
look,
Yeah.
but 87. Vintage.
So I would like to have the opportunity to provide hard copies. It's not going to look exactly like that because we don't have those lying around, but I can make copies of what I have in my office and provide hard copies to each of the board members. And then the process of scanning and putting those online, for what it's worth. But I can't promise I will go take photos of homes in their current condition.
No. I did not intend you to do that at all. I just meant if we had a baseline, the scans, that in the future we could retype DPR forms, we could add photos, but it seems to me that if we had a starting point, it would be easy to sort of, you know, I think evidently we have a past volunteer, we could get people to go and, you know, if there was an Eagle Scout project or, you know, we could get them to supplement these initial scans. But I think these are historic documents now. So I think there is some advantage to keeping them online in their current state.
Yeah, I mean, having a scanned version of the DPR forms attached to the property as just a linked record sounds lovely. Yeah.
And we will continue
Yeah.
to keep a link to the past web pages because
Yeah.
they do a very nice job of indexing it and all those other
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No knock on past. They're doing a great job. It's just like, we need to meet them. We need to do our part of it.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Is there a movement to adjourn?
Oh, wait, I had one more thought. So back in the olden days, I had these little cards, little City of Palo Alto calling cards. And I'm wondering if, when we have our public meetings, if there's some advantage to HRB members having a card where they could, write down their email address or write down, 3 thoughts or, I just think there's some advantage to connecting and you introduce yourself and you say your name, but and I'm not sold on this one. I'm interested in what other people think too, but I do think there are times, and these public meetings seem like might be one of them, where it might behoove us to have, something professional as, a calling card.
So I'll have to look into that. I think these are only for employees, paid employees of the city. Perhaps council, because they do get a stipend, has them, but I don't know of any other board or commission that has City of Palo Alto, business cards. So this is a question I can raise, certainly. Yeah.
Well, I still have plenty, so I don't need any more.
All right. Is there a movement to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.